Now we are on chapter 14 of Treasure Island, The First Blow. I was so pleased at having given the slip to Long John that I began to enjoy myself and look around on the strange land that I was in. I had crossed a marshy tract full of bulrushes and come upon a sandy area about a mile long. I now felt the joy of exploration. There were flowering plants unknown to me, and snakes. One raised his head and hissed at me. Then I came to a long thicket of oak-like trees called live oaks, which grew low along the sand like brambles. The boughs twisted, the foliage compact, like thatch. The thicket stretched to the margin of the broad, reedy marsh through which the nearest of the little rivers soaked its way into the anchorage. So when it's saying a thicket, he's just describing a very dense, very hard to get through forest, right, of these live oak trees. And when it says its boughs twisted, it's talking about the branches. They're just so thick, and the foliage, meaning the leaves, are so compact that they're like this, like thatched, like they're interlocking. Suddenly a wild duck flew up with a quack. Another followed, and soon a great cloud of birds hung screaming and circling in the air above the marsh. I judged at once that some of my shipmates must be near, and soon I heard the tones of a human voice growing steadily louder. I crawled under cover of the nearest live oak and squatted there, as silent as a mouse. Another voice answered, and then the first voice, which I recognized to be Silver's, once more took up the story. I could tell the direction of the speakers pretty exactly, not only by the sound of their voices, but by the behavior of the few birds that still hung in alarm above the intruders. Crawling on all fours, I made steadily towards them, till at last, raising my head to an opening among the leaves, I could see Silver and another of the crew face to face. "Mate," Silver was saying, "it's because I think gold dust of you that I am here warning you. If one of the wild uns knew it, where would I be, Tom?" "Silver," said the other man, his voice shaking, "you're old and honest, or has the name for it. You've money, too, and you're brave. You'll let yourself be led away with these swabs? Not you. As sure as God sees me, I'd sooner lose my hand if I turn again my duty." And then all of a sudden, he was interrupted by a noise. I had found one of the honest hands, and at that same moment came news of another. From the marsh there arose a cry of anger, and then another on the back of it, and then one horrid scream. The rocks of the spyglass echoed it. The marsh birds rose again, and while that death yell was still in my brain, silence reestablished its empire, and only the rustle of descending birds and the boom of distant waves disturbed the afternoon. Tom leaped at the sound, but Silver winked not an eye. He stood resting lightly on his crutch, watching like a snake about to spring. "John!" cried Tom, stretching out his hand. "Hands off!" cried Silver, leaping back a yard. "It's a black conscience that makes you fear me, John Silver. In heaven's name, tell me, what was that?" "That?" returned Silver, smiling but wary, his eye gleaming. "Oh, I reckon that'll be Allen." "Allen!" Tom cried. "Rest his soul, and as for you, John Silver, you're my mate no more. If I die like a dog, I'll die in my duty. You've killed Allen? Kill me too, then, if you can, but I defy you." And with that, this brave fellow turned his back on the cook and set off toward the beach. But he was not destined to go far. John seized a branch, whipped the crutch out of his armpit, and sent that missile hurling through the air. It struck poor Tom with a stunning violence right between the shoulders in the middle of his back. His hands flew up, he gave a gasp, and fell. To judge from the sound, his back was broken on the spot, but he had no time to recover. Silver, agile as a monkey, even without leg or crutch, was on top of him in a moment and had twice buried his knife up to the hilt in that defenseless body. So he has just killed this man. The world swam around me in a whirling mist. When I came to, the monster had pulled himself together, his crutch under his arm, his hat upon his head. Just before him, Tom lay motionless, but the murderer minded him not a whit, cleaning his blood-stained knife on the wisp of grass. It seemed unreal that a human life had been cruelly cut short a moment since, before my eyes. Now John blew a signal on his whistle that rang far across the heated air. It instantly awoke my fears. More men would be coming, and I might be discovered. They had already slain 2 of the honest people. Might not I come next? As soon as I was clear of the thicket, I ran as I never ran before, scarce minding the direction of my flight, so long as it led me from the murderers. My fear grew into a kind of frenzy. It was all over, I thought. Nothing was left for me but death by starvation, or by the hands of the mutineers. All this while, running without taking notice, I had drawn near the foot of the little hill with the 2 peaks, where the live oaks seemed more like forest trees. Here a fresh alarm brought me to a standstill with a thumping heart. We're going to stop there, as the next chapter is The Man of the Island.